learn to say yes to. And if you'll say yes, God will do this next thing. Jesus takes my small yes to what's inconvenient and turns it into opportunities for growth. Takes my small yeses, those things that become inconvenient, but I said yes to him anyway, and he uses them to grow me. And let me give you an example. This service is an example of that for me. Now, many of you only know me in the 35 minutes that I'm up here, and so you see me in this particular role, and so maybe you understand that this isn't just my passion, this is also my career. And I know that confuses some of you because some of you think, what does he actually do the other 6 days a week? And why in the world would he need such a large staff to help him do whatever those people do in 6 days? Well, my friends, it's a full-time job to keep some of you out of hell. That's why we're so busy. And if it's not you, it's that other person on the end of your row. Can anybody say amen to that? Like, maybe it's not you, but it's somebody. And that keeps the people of God busy all the time. Well, maybe that was more for me than you, but at least I got it off my chest right now. So now that I've said that, let me say what I was going to say. There are some things that are challenging in ministry, even that happen here on the platform. And some of those have to do with topics that when we talk about them as pastors, I believe there's enough people always in an environment that say, well, of course you have to say that because you're a pastor. Like you even want to say it because it'll come back and benefit you. For instance, like of course you're going to tell people to come to church because it's got to be a lot more enjoyable to preach to an audience of people rather than an empty building. Of course you're going to say come to church. Of course you're going to say serve. Who wouldn't want a bunch of free labor? Of course you're going to say give, because if people didn't give, then you'd have to go get a real job. Okay, well, that's probably none of you saying that, but I have heard my pastor friends say that it happens in their churches, okay? And so maybe you were one of those people that came from a church where, you're a little skeptical, and maybe even here tonight, I'm going to say some things that make you a little uncomfortable. Well, let me encourage you with this. I'm not saying what I'm going to say for my benefit. I'm saying what I'm saying for your benefit. I never did things as I was growing up, just so that it would, be for the benefit of my pastor. I always realized that whatever he was saying, or whatever I was being taught by the different people God brought into my life, that it wasn't for their benefit that they were saying what they were saying. It was for my benefit if I would do it. The application of God's word is for our benefit. And so how it happened in my life was like this. In my sophomore, junior, and senior year of college, I gave God 3 inconvenient yeses. How many of you in this room, by the way, are in your sophomore, junior, or senior year of college? Anybody? Okay. I'll kind of direct a lot of my attention this way, okay, for the next few minutes. But in those 3 years of college, 3 things that I said to the Lord 30 years ago that is affecting me today. And I said, I'm going to go to church regularly. And for those of you that live in California, that doesn't mean Christmas and Easter. Okay? Met a lot of people in California. Yeah, when did you come to church? 2005. And then I came in 2006, and then I missed about a decade, and now I'm here in 2015. I'm regular. No, every weekend, like most of the weekends of the year, I said, I'm going to go to church. Most of the weekends, I'm going to serve in my church, and I'm going to, give financially to my church. Now, if some of you know my story, you might say this. You might say, well, that's easy for you because I know your story. It was in your freshman year of university that you felt called into ministry. Full-time ministry. So obviously, it would be easy for you to go to church and serve and do all those things because that's where your life was headed. Well, let me tell you why it was still inconvenient. Because the university that I went to, it's a seminary-style university, and so we had on our college campus chapel Monday through Friday. And it wasn't just available to us, it was required to graduate. So I already went to church 5 times before the weekend. If there was anybody that could have had an excuse, like, I don't need to go to church, I went to church 5 times. Like, that's more than some people go in an entire year. I just did it in 1 week. And then I was doing different ministry on our campus, and so I could have easily said, I'm already serving, and, I was giving financially to the Christian institution. It was called tuition. It was like I could have convinced myself, like, I am giving thousands of dollars to Christian causes and serving and going. And so I could have easily excused myself because at this point in my life, nobody is requiring me to go to church on the weekend. No one is checking up on me. No one is watching except Jesus, who is going to offer me some opportunities that might feel inconvenient, but if I would say yes to them, he would use them to grow faith in my life. And so it wasn't convenient to get up again on a Sunday morning and get in the car and drive to a local church. It wasn't convenient to get up on Wednesday night and go back and serve in the youth ministry program. That's what I was a part of serving in. In fact, in my junior and senior year, I actually felt called to a church that was 45 minutes away. And so I would get up, actually on Saturday night, I would leave the Kirkland area, and I would drive down to Tacoma, and I would spend Saturday night down at Tacoma, and I'd get up early Sunday morning to be at this first service, because they had a first service and a second service, and they had an evening service, and I'd stay there all day. It wasn't convenient, but I said yes to that. And I started going back on Wednesday night, and I would serve in the youth program on Wednesday night, and I had papers to do and all kinds of stuff. And there were certain times, during, finals and stuff, like, you have to miss a Wednesday here or something. But, most Wednesdays, I got up, and it wasn't convenient, and I drove back down there. I would leave the campus about 4 o'clock, and I'd get down, and I'd serve, and I'd give to that church. And I didn't know that I was doing anything more than just simply getting into the shallow waters of saying yes to what was inconvenient. But I'll tell you this, God honored those yeses. And he grew my faith. And part of how he did that is that he would bring people into my life that actually stretched my faith. And even though I was paying thousands of dollars to go to a university, and God did use that university to grow my faith, I'll tell you this, more faith happened off campus than on campus in my life. I actually felt like those stories of leaving the campus and doing what was inconvenient put me not only in a proximity of God being able to stretch me, but it put me in a proximity of people that would stretch me. I would meet one guy, his name is Rich Wilkerson. Rich Wilkerson will be our guest next week on this stage. He has been a friend of mine for 30 years, and I'm so delighted. We've never had him at New Life Church before. He lives now in Miami, so it's very hard to get him out on the West Coast, but he's going to be here next week. You do not want to miss next week. I'm telling you, he's one of the finest communicators in the country that I know of, and he stretched my faith in my lifetime. He's going to be our guest. His father-in-law was the pastor of the church that I started going to the second couple years. His name is Fulton Buntain, was Fulton Buntain. He's now with the Lord. But Fulton Buntain at that time in history had built a large church, and I'd never seen a church that large, and the vision that he had and the faith that he had, and his brother, was a missionary to Calcutta, and the things that were happening in Calcutta because of that family. The Buntain family impacted my life. And then I'd meet the youth pastor, who was a youth pastor at that church. His name is John Gregg. And I'd meet John Gregg, and I'd start serving with him in youth ministry. And now, all these years later, John Gregg is the pastor of Calvary Temple Church on the other side of this county. And so he's down at the church Calvary Temple, and he's a guy that was in my life back there. And 3 people came into my life during that season of my life. When I gave God some inconvenient yeses, God brought some people in my life that stretched my faith. And it wasn't just that. I said a moment ago, I actually believe I'm here because of some inconvenient yeses in my college days. How that happened was this: when I graduated, those 3 men in my life were significant in me landing my first ministry position. I got a job in a church that was larger than I should have gotten a job in at that time in history. I was a single guy, and I shouldn't have gotten into this church, but because I had the endorsement of these particular people, because I had the experience of spending some time with them, all of a sudden doors of opportunity opened that would have not otherwise opened, I believe. And then I would work for a guy, this was in Spokane, Washington, I would work for a guy who would later on be called to Concord, California. And then in a number of years, he would invite Crystal and I to come down and be his associate on that staff. For 7 years, we worked on the other side of this county in a church called Calvary Temple, and at the end of that 7 years, God used that church to help plant New Life Church. So my friends, New Life Church and me standing here tonight goes all the way back to some experience in my sophomore, junior, and senior year of college. My friends, that was 30 years ago. Don't underestimate what Jesus wants to do in your life, even if right now it's a little yes to an inconvenience. God will take it and God will grow it. You don't come to this church for my benefit. You come to this church for your benefit. You don't serve in ministry for my benefit. You serve in ministry for your benefit. You don't start giving to the Lord for my benefit. You start giving to the Lord for your benefit. Come on, friends. This is the gospel. This is the good news. When you understand it, that I don't have to be up here to try to manipulate something. I'm up here to share what has changed my life. And if you'll receive that as a word to your life, I believe that these little yeses make a big difference. God can grow our faith even with little yeses. But it doesn't end there. I want to give you this other one tonight. Jesus gives me more opportunity to increase faith